opportunity to live up to their promise of finally bringing transparency to this horrific saga. 2 years ago, my sister Maria asked the FBI to do an investigation of their Epstein law enforcement failures. They refused to do that. She has made repeated FOIA requests for her own files in this case. They have never been provided. Most recently, they responded that they would get back to her in November 2027. In May, having been repeatedly ignored by the US government, Maria filed a lawsuit against them. I believe many other survivors will join me in doing the same. If the government won't do it on its own, it's up to us, the survivors, to demand accountability, demand transparency, and to hold US law enforcement responsible for failing to do their jobs. I just also wanted to add that it has been an incredible experience today to be in the room with so many powerful female leaders in this community, and the conversations we had about how these issues of child sexual exploitation, of trafficking, they are not just things happening over there. They're not just things happening to other people. They're very much things happening in this community. And it is so important that we continue to come together and work to educate people about these crimes and to make sure that people know that they will be held accountable for committing these crimes. When I have the most powerful aspect of I'd say today's meeting and my trip to DC was the power that comes with speaking with other survivors. And I truly believe that this issue is not going away, and we are more emboldened than ever, and we will get the answers that we demand.
Thank you, Amy. And I know that I speak for all the folks that are here, that we are so grateful that Annie is part of our community here in Long Beach, and that we support her completely. And it's so important that we get the justice that these women deserve, and that the full files are immediately released by the Department of Justice and the president. And when Annie came to DC, and her courage for coming to DC to meet with us, and I remember when she came up to me and said, I live in Long Beach. And it hits you so differently. This is not just a national story. This is a story that is happening in our communities across this country. People need to understand how the impact is real, and that justice is critical to the work ahead. I'm going to introduce Senator Lina Gonzalez. I do want to say two things. I want to be crystal clear that we strongly oppose any appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to the Supreme Court. Her actions were monstrous and led to the terror, the abuse, and the trafficking of women and girls in this country. And the idea that she receives and is transferred to essentially a resort-light prison because the Department of Justice makes that decision, or that somehow a pardon can be floated possibly for her release, or some kind of deal to get her to comply with whatever it is the Department of Justice may want her to do or say, is outrageous. And every American should be opposed to any type of deal or appeal for Ghislaine Maxwell, who is a monster, I think, in my opinion, and the opinion, I think, of most folks. And so that needs to be clear, especially this week. The second thing that is important is right now, the president has the power to bring justice and transparency by releasing the full files. And we're asking him to just live up to his promise during the campaign, which was to release the full files. That is all that we want. There's a subpoena out. The victims and the survivors have all demanded the same thing. And it's time for them to be able to move forward with their lives and get the answers that they deserve. And with that, I want to introduce Senator Lina Gonzalez.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. State Senator for the 33rd District, representing my hometown of Long Beach, Southeast Los Angeles, and Catalina Island. So very grateful for my congressman, my hometown congressman, for not just moving forward with being the House ranking chair, but for bringing forward this very important issue to bring justice and transparency. And I want to thank you, Annie Farmer, for your strength, your voice, your boldness, your courageous, just truth to power. And so many of the victims and survivors that have expressed their deep and personal stories in front of the public. It's so very difficult to do. But why is it that women in the United States have to be brave and resilient and bold? It is so absolutely unfair that we are now in a place where the President of the United States is unwilling to combat this type of behavior. He is complicit. And I have often said he would rather distract than release the Epstein files. He has placed people in our communities to go after United States citizens. He is engaged in corruption. And yet we still have women whose voices have not been heard, whose own government knows more about their sexual abuse than they do. We need to be demanding that the Epstein files be shared, because we know it is estimated that 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 13 boys in the United States experience child sexual abuse. And as I shared with Annie, I'm a mom of 3 sons. I never want my sons to ever feel complicit or as though that this behavior somehow is acceptable. Not here, not in the United States. No child or youth should ever have to go through what Annie and her sister and so many went through. Their sense of safety, mental health, their future should always be top priority for any government official. Whether you are Democrat or Republican or independent, a local, state, or federal official, you should be speaking out and outraged by what is going on. And this issue, again, should not be partisan, as I mentioned. Everyone, and regardless of who is on the list, we demand answers and transparency, regardless if you are a celebrity, if you are a former or current president, if you are a tech billionaire, whoever you are, if you are on the list, we need to know. And America is watching closely, and we want lasting change. That starts with greater transparency and releasing the files now. And I am so very thankful for the women that are standing with me here, with Congressman Garcia, with Annie. We're not just standing with Annie, we're standing with all survivors today. And this is so very important, that these women back here who've been combating human trafficking and child abuse and sexual assault here in our own hometown, that we are speaking and saying that we will not forget this, but we will certainly, as long as we have these titles, be in the forefront in ensuring that transparency and accountability is at the forefront. And I also want to provide some really important information as well for anyone listening today that has been a victim of sexual assault or abuse or human trafficking, or if you have questions about it. We do have the Women's Shelter 24-hour crisis hotline at 562-437-4663. The National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-373-7888, as well as the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE, that is 1-800-656-4673. We absolutely stand with you, Annie. We will continue fighting this. And as a member of the Women's Caucus, I will tell you, I'm one of about 50 women legislators, and it's a bipartisan caucus. I will be asking at the state level when we come back for the legislative year in January, I'll be asking that we also release the Epstein files if they are not released by then, and ensuring that whether you're a Democrat or Republican state senator or state assembly member, that we're coming together to get the answers that we absolutely need. And we will absolutely continue to fight this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're gonna open up if there's any questions, and then I'll make a comment about the looming shutdown. Are there any questions for either Annie or any yes, question?
Yeah, great question. I think there's some misconceptions when it comes to a list, right? There are people whose names have been associated with Epstein for some time that we know were really crucial parts of, for example, financing his activities, that have never seen any consequences. So those are people like Les Wexner, who gave millions of dollars to Epstein that allowed him to operate in the way that he did. And I think that there are others whose names have been public. And then there are, and I think part of what we're saying when we say we want accountability is not just for other perpetrators of crimes that women were trafficked to, but also the people that enabled these crimes, the people that looked the other way, and the people that stood in the way of justice unfolding how it should have, right? And so in my particular case, the people that harmed me were Epstein and Maxwell, but I've spoken with other survivors who have shared that that there were other people involved in the crimes against them. And I think that they're in some powerful positions, but I think that this is now on the government. What we're asking is, do your job and please release that information in a way that's safe for everyone.
Yes. This is not an issue that we're going to drop or just move aside. There's a lot of important things happening in this country, but there are millions of girls and women and boys and children that are watching what we're doing right now. And the idea that we are not going to seek justice at this moment, this is a case that's also much larger than just Ghislaine Maxwell or all of us here. There are so many people across this country that are seeing how we react to this, and to actually know if they can actually share their story, or if they can trust their government, or if something happens to them, will someone be there to actually seek justice for them? And so that is why this story matters so much. And at the same time, it gets to the idea for us about following through on commitments that have been made. Our Attorney General told the American people that all of the files and documents were on her desk, reviewed and ready to be released. I personally heard from women who want to know what happened to them, but still, because of their trauma, they have disassociated and may not remember everything and the abuse that happened to them at any particular moment. So what terrifies them is that the government has the record of what happened to them, and yet they don't get access to that. And so that's just one case of why this release is so critical. And certainly nobody here, we are not going to allow this to go away. We're going to push every single day to get the full release of all the files and documents. And remember, they've only complied with a tiny bit of the subpoena. They've sent us such a limited amount of information, and we don't understand why the rest of the information isn't being sent out. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna make a statement on the shutdown, and then if there's folks that want to do anything else individually, I know there's some Spanish language folks. We'll go ahead and do that as well. Just want to make a general statement about the government shutdown. All members of Congress right now are on their way from their home districts to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be getting on a plane here pretty soon. We know that right now on Wednesday, if there is no deal that is actually negotiated between the White House Republicans and Democrats, that there will be a government shutdown, and that would be horrific for this country. We should be very clear that right now, this government and the majority is controlled by President Trump and Speaker Johnson, and of course in the Senate, Leader Thune. So we're asking them at this moment is to negotiate and to ensure, for us, our top priority is to not lose health care for the American public. Over the next few months, we're going to see premiums go up. We're going to see the Affordable Care Act try to be dismantled. And people are going to lose their health care, whether it's through Medicaid, Medi-Cal, or through their own premiums. And so it's really important that right now, we stand tall and firm and say no more cuts to health care. And that's our ask as it relates to the shutdown. And so with that, thank you all very much. A big thank you to Annie for joining us today, and thank all of you for sharing her story. Thank you.